Welcome to the strategy webinar. This is a recurring thing that I do regularly. But this time I got some very different insights. So I'll go through a couple of the key insights first from a more general perspective, but then I'll zoom in on some specific stuff that I think has changed and that I'm really excited about. It's still emerging, but I'll get to it when I'm a bit further down in the slides. So very first, shortly, we're Pronovix. We're a company that specializes in developer portals. We build portals that evolve with your business, meaning that we don't have an out-of-the-box SaaS product, but we've got, I'd like to call it a composable upgrade subscription SaaS, which is basically a tool that can evolve to address the needs that you have specifically, and that you still get the benefits of hosting support and maintenance and all of that stuff. But it's based on open source software. We run the Devportal Awards. We run the API the Docs community. We have got a conference called AI the Docs that's coming, I think in June. So we had a first version of that last year, and we'll have a second iteration of it this year. If you're interested in learning more about the intersection of AI, APIs, and documentation, then go check it out. It should be very interesting. Also, if you have a talk that you would like to do, if you have some interesting use case of using LLMs or tangential technology for generating documentation or using documentation, or for serving documentation inside of different contexts, and then we'd love to get a submission from you. We, as a company, our motto is grow and help grow. That means that we try to help our champions succeed, meaning that we work together with our champions, not necessarily to provide a dev portal tool specifically alone, but like to build something that evolves with the needs of the team so that the team can stay important. This is something I normally go into more in detail on one-on-one conversations. If any of this piques your interest, just let us know and we can have a one-on-one. Normally in this webinar, I would talk about things like this. And we talk about how typically when people come to us asking for a developer portal, they typically start with like, we want to improve our developer experience. And then after we've done that, then we would like to improve the operations. So like after we've improved our documentation and the ability for people to get access to documentation and get access to APIs, we want to automate the publishing of APIs or the provisioning of access to APIs. And then one day, maybe sometime, we'll think about how we're going to make money with this. And then I would say that does not work, and that you need to first focus on business bright spots and then use those to create a beachhead in your executive's brain, so that the portal does not lose an interest in the organization, and so that you can actually achieve your strategic value. I talk about the Devportal value compass, about the 3 types of value that you need to deliver with a portal to be successful. About self-service hub, like some of these are a bit older slides, but I went looking for how the webinar has been evolving over the years. It could be about self-service and how to do that through your portal. Could be about trust signals and how the quality of your portal gives a signal about if your team is going to be around in the near future, and if it's worth to make an investment with your APIs. About developer experience and how that relates to API friction and how to remove it. And then what kind of portals you might want to build, and last but not least, what kind of documentation you might want to add to your portals. All of this I will not talk about today, or not in detail. I'll focus on a bit higher, from a bit more. It'll be a little bit more abstract because I'll talk about 2 big trends that I'm seeing caused by GenAI. and how they're impacting SaaS business as a business model, and also how they're impacting the developer portals that SaaS companies, or actually all of us, need to have. I realized that this was so impactful for SaaS companies because I was talking about this with customers, and I was writing about it, and also thinking about our own business model and how it's changing because of AI. And that's why I thought, okay, I need to share this, and that's why we set up this event. Okay, so it's a special edition, and this is the question that I want to address today. I hope there'll be some time for interaction at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I might drop in there if there's a good point, or otherwise we'll just do it at the end altogether. So how will generative AI impact your strategy for your dev portal as a SaaS company? So I'm Kristof Van Tomme. I'm CEO of Pronovix. We are a company that has been around for 19 years. We started as a Drupal agency, and if you're not familiar with Drupal, Drupal is an open source content management system. And I went looking, and in 2012, we organized, together with Lara, my co-founder, we organized a CXO event to talk about how to turn Drupal into a product, or like how to build products using Drupal in a sustainable way. And there were a lot of people, but the results were not very successful because there was just the community was very immature. Product thinking, like people were still talking about what is a product actually, and what does that mean inside of this open source community. And it was a bit. It was interesting, but it was not as interesting as we thought it would have been. And yeah, thinking back to that, and it's now 13 years, and also thinking about the business model for our business, because we ourselves chose as a developer portal company, we deliberately chose not to become a SaaS company, not to become a true, like, what you typically expect to be a SaaS, where you have a very opinionated product ownership that is defining one set of features for a very specific narrow audience that is optimized, and that just merely through the scale of it, you can spread the cost of building a very, very good tool over a lot of customers, and then reduce the cost for the customers, and still make a lot of profit. That sounds really great, right? And I think a lot of you are running or are part of SaaS companies, so you know that this is like what a good business model that is, and why normally it doesn't make sense to do a lot of customizations on top of these things. We chose deliberately not to go that route because we ran into problems with our really large enterprise customers, because when they would come to us, they would always say, like, yeah, I like Kristof, I don't want anything special. I want just a standard, but it needs to work this way. So when we started talking about that, it was just really hard to single out a very, very narrow scope. And we didn't want to let go of helping our customers with whatever automation they needed to be able to adapt their API program to their needs and to how their organization worked. So we decided not to become a SaaS company. And now, last half a year or so, or maybe a bit longer, we've been on a drive, like on our next step in our own journey, towards what I call a composable SaaS, or composable. Well, it doesn't have a clear name yet, but it's composable because we have modular units that we can reuse between customers. It's delivered like SaaS, but it's not monolithic. It is open source, so you can own it as a customer. You can build extra extensions to it if you want to, and make it exactly what you need it to be. But there's this shared learning and co-evolution between customers that we're facilitating, so that the delivery of features can be or delivery of capabilities can be cheaper than if you would build fully custom, but it can be more detailed than if you would go for an out-of-the-box like standards off-the-shelf product. And I'll explain later a bit more why we chose that specifically. Now, in our journey, and this is the core insight, one of the core insights that I talked about, in our journey building developer portals for customers, regardless of our business model, we bumped into this thing that developers didn't necessarily want to go to developer portals. So it's kind of funny because, you know, this portal is made for them. It's to facilitate their work, but developer would they just want to get the job done. So the portal needs to get out of the way often. And typically and this is the same with documentation portals. You know, normally there's this engagement metric where the longer people stay on your page, the better it is. With documentation and also with developer portals, when somebody just bounces off your page or off your portal, just grabs the information and just goes away and they're good, that can actually be a good thing. And that applies not only for developers and their usage of portals, that not only applies to the consumption of APIs, but also applies to the production of documentation. Developers generally don't really like going into a content management system to create documentation. So the way we solve this ourselves is because what we have seen is that developer portals are not only for developers, they also play a really important function in explaining what is possible to business people and to sometimes even executives. And so what we realized is that we needed to serve both a business audience and a technical audience. And the business audience, they needed things that gave trust, these beautiful pages, the rich landing pages, stuff like that. For that, we used the content management system. And then the developers, they needed, they just wanted the job to be done without them having to enter the developer portal on the production side. So they just wanted CI/CD to publish documentation into the portal through an API. Okay, so that sounds all great. Sounds like an interesting feature. But is that really all that's going on here? Because if you think about it, this journey that I just described, this split between business audiences that are happy to go into this place and go into the context of your site just to get a feel of, is this a tool I can trust? And these technical audiences that just have a job they have to get done, and the tool is really essential to their job, but their job is not to update the documentation. They're getting paid for creating good code and to solve business problems with code. That is, yes, that is applicable to the developer space, but it's also applicable to every other space. And this was the realization, is that so because if you think about it, most SaaS software, and well, it's not even SaaS, most software today requires you as a user to go into a graphical user interface. If you want to make a booking, you go to a website, or you go to a mobile app on your phone, and you enter a web app or a mobile app, and you start interacting with it. You get absorbed into that context, and you perform a set of steps to achieve a certain outcome. If you are working in sales, after you've done a call or after you've had an interaction, you have to go and record that into your SaaS software, and so on and so on and so on. So we have this pattern that yes, we have tools that we can take with us, but typically they require us to go into the context of the tool to achieve a certain outcome. And this is across the board. All of SaaS software definitely does this. There's some exceptions, like notable exceptions, like tools like API SaaS or API first SaaS software is different because they are providing a tool that a developer can use to build something else. But normally, across the board, most business productivity tools, most SaaS software, if they're not focused on the API and the business logic and um, the place where the information is stored and the business logic only, and the experience layer is maybe cut off and replaced by an API. If they're not that, then they normally have graphical user interfaces. And I want to show you a video, or this video for me blew my mind. I don't know if you've seen this. This is Superface. What you're seeing here is a salesperson has spoken in like a text. They've just come off a phone. They've spoken in a text, and they've submitted it. I'll send. Can I do it again? Let's see. Let me start it again. So they speak the text. They submit it into the chat tool where they're already working with their colleagues. The agent starts extracting the information from that interaction, sets up a bunch of tasks that have to be executed, and then after approval starts executing. Let me just pause it here. So I don't know about you, but for me, this was wow. Because this changes everything. Because these tools, all these tools that you're seeing here, all these tools that you're seeing here, they are right now dependent on your attention to make them valuable. So what happens here is that they are being replaced by an API call that completely takes away the importance of the experience that that tool has for this specific persona. This changes everything. By the way, this was Superface. A friend of mine, Zdeněk Nemec, is one of the co-founders. Go check out their work. They're super cool. This is kind of a prelude to this question, or one of the questions that I have for you today to think about. Should a SaaS or any kind of software, or a specific instance of software, should it be a space or a tool? And I'll explain what I mean with that. You see, if you think about software, there are some software that are, or as I already just explained, most SaaS tools act as a space. They have a user interface that you enter into. And what happens when you enter a mobile application or web application is that you get fully absorbed. Your context shifts from where you were before, and you get absorbed in your screen. You know, the screen zombie thing. That's basically what today we all do constantly. But what is going on is that you're pulled from the context where you are into another context, and that's really powerful because when you move into a certain context, when you get into, when you load this context into your brain and you adapt to it, suddenly certain interactions that before were much harder become easier because there's these capabilities that are available inside of that context. Another way of using software is to use it as a tool, as something that you can take with you into a context to do a job there with it. To take the capabilities of that tool and to apply it inside of the context that you're using. Right now, today, if you are using your smartphone to look up a flight or something, or even if you're doing, this is why you're not supposed to use your phone while you're driving, because you get absorbed in the phone context if you're, if you really start interacting with it. That's why you have to do it hands-free. Is this shifting between contexts, and what is the primary context that you're currently interacting with? talk a little bit more about tools and spaces. A tool is, for example, a knife. If you have a knife, you can take it with you outside and to start and use it to cut vegetables on a table outside in your garden. The knife, the tool, does not care where it's being used. Its capabilities, normally there are certain contexts where other capabilities become available, or where some capabilities you had before are no longer available. Like you don't want to take a knife into a group of people. It's not good. But these affordances normally are available wherever you take a tool. Now, a kitchen, a room becomes a kitchen when there's an oven, when there's a sink, when there's a cutting board, when there's knives, when all of these things are there together. Then suddenly that room is no longer an undifferentiated room. It becomes something special, where now it's much easier to do cooking. Like cooking outside takes a lot of effort because you have to take everything out there and do stuff. When you're doing it inside, it's much simpler because you have everything around you, and it facilitates the interactions. So this is the difference between tools and spaces. So spaces change your context and change the energy it takes to do something. Tools provide you with affordances and allow you to do new things that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to do through the capabilities that they have. Now, as already explained, SaaS tools today typically are spaces that require you to enter their context to do your job. And now with spaces, there's some interesting stuff, because some spaces are like alive, or spaces by choice. I'm still working on how to call these things. And as I said, I have I've got 2 blog posts that I've published on Substack, one on tools and spaces and affordances, and one on GenAI as a utility for coherence. So, well, if you're into this stuff, go check it out. Now, the interesting thing with spaces is that for some people, a space might be alive, where they actually enjoy being there because the space is empowering them, and it's helping them to do more things. Other spaces can be not so much fun because they're tyrannical. They force you to do certain things that you might not want to do. And if your SaaS tool is more of the second, more tyrannical than alive, for a certain audience, you have a problem. Because as I already showed you with the Superface example, with GenAI, there's now the possibility to replace this tyrannical experience with something where people no longer need to go into that context, and that can be dangerous for your organization. So the thing that what's happening is that the rules are being changed because of this ability to. So before, if you were trying to interact with software, you had to know exactly what you wanted to do, where to click, what magic word was going to start a function. Developers had to code a specific interaction and create a specific connection by knowing exactly what they were going to do, and by transforming the information that they were going to give to this function in a very specific format. Now this has become looser. While it takes some compute and it actually can cost quite some money to make a fit that's not really there, now you can make a fit that's not really there, and you can replace an investment that before had to be done in specific coupling between certain functions of software. You can now replace it by something that's a little bit more probabilistic, which opens up a whole new territory and possibilities. If your SaaS product fully relies on interactions that people don't want to do, then you have a problem, because then people will probably start going towards these more tool-like applications that they can take into the conversation that they're having, like on Slack or during a an online meeting, or maybe even in a meeting, where they can like trigger the interaction that they want to have done, without having to like shift the context from what they're doing and the people that they're interacting with at that moment, and so on. Like an example, currently that doesn't really work well yet, but we've done this thing where, with Laura, who is on the call, Laura Palma. I've done this where we did a brainstorming about a brochure for a company, with people and an LLM. And again, this interaction is very interesting. If you could have this fluid interaction where you have a system with its capabilities available inside of that context where you're already interacting, that would be much, much smoother and much more nicer. So what I think is going to happen is that there's two paths that your SaaS persona can evolve into. So either your tool becomes engaging and an interactive space for a user, so a certain user profile or certain persona, or it becomes a tool where that persona can take that tool into the context that they actually want to use the tool. Everybody has to move into our context to do things, and the dependency on the engagement economy to prove the value of what you're doing as an organization, I think it will take some time, but I think it will come to an end. So all SaaS, I think, needs even the ones that can be disengaging spaces like a Slack or something like that. Will need to invest in the API-driven tools to make those capabilities that they have available outside of the space context that they're providing. Practical, what does that mean for SaaS tools? I think that there will be less reliance on GUI-based interactions, more emphasis on API-driven integrations. So also, I think a shift from products that are fully standalone to more composable product suites. We already see this happening with what's the name? HubSpot. Yes, that's the one I was looking for, where there's lots of different tools and they all work together. You can pick and choose which ones you want to combine together to have available for you as an organization. I think this kind of approach of a more modular way of building up or making your capabilities available so that customers can compose them either into a space where they actually enjoy and it gives fulfillment and meaning to interact with your tool, or to take those capabilities and bring them into another place. I think that's a shift that's going to happen where the customers will develop their own spaces and create compose the tools that they want to have in the spaces that they're creating for specific purposes. So the other shift that I want to talk about is the shift of the value of SaaS, where I think today a lot of the value of SaaS is in the availability of features that are being developed, independently of the customer. The customer can basically just subscribe, and they're getting a stream of updated product that gets new features as different things become available and important inside of the practice space that a certain tool is active in. What I think is going to happen because of one other shift that's going to happen because of AI is that there will be a shift from features to affordances. What I mean with that, I don't know. Can you, if you know what is an affordance, if you really understand it? It took me a lot of time to understand this word, and I think now I have a good grasp. But still, it's this complex thing that's hard to keep in your head. But if you have a decent grasp of the word affordance, can you put a thumbs up? There's in the middle of your controls, there's the face, and if you click on that, you get a couple of different things. Yeah. So if you don't know, can you put a thumbs down? If you're not shy. Okay. Okay, so good. So affordances, thank you. Yeah. So affordances is this really weird thing because an affordance. So the feature is a property of a product, of a tool. A feature you can create and you can design and you can make available for your customers. Affordances are somewhat different because an affordance is what people know, the user knows that they can do with that tool. And so that depends not only on the tool, but also depends on the person. If the person did not get training, if they don't understand your tool, they will not have the affordances. Also, affordances are things that we as tool makers, we discover in our environment. Like if you're looking for a hammer, then you might take a big heavy stone or a big block of metal and discover a new affordance that you can use it to hammer a nail into your wall. And so affordances is this really interesting thing that is not a technical thing, it's a social technical property of the relationship between people that are using tools and the tools themselves. So affordances are also social. And if you, we've done this, so an earlier version of my podcast, API Resilience, I did some episodes with Mark Bergauer, and then we've talked about social practice theory and things like that. Got it here. Pierre Bourdieu, you can see it. So he's it was an anthropologist who did some really interesting work around practices and how they evolve and how they actually work. And the interesting thing is that practices have like a reason why you're doing it, like a meaning. They've got a material aspect, and then there's so it's like a social thing where we learn from each other what are the affordances of tools by observing others and by talking with them about what they're doing exactly and how they're doing things. It's very, very fascinating stuff. So go and have a look at this. It changed how I'm looking at the world. Now, affordances in SaaS. So when we're until today, if you're moving into a space, affordances are less important. They're important because if you don't know how to use a tool, then you're also not going to you're not going to be able to use it, obviously. But the affordances, there were like you can design the documentation, you can design the space so that the affordances become almost obvious. But if you have a tool that's kind of hidden, if you're not requiring your customers to come into your space to do their job, but you have a capability that's exposed as an API, now the affordances of that capability, so the things that you can do with that, become really, really important because they're no longer as much in your face. Also, like APIs sometimes can make really interesting affordances available that were not there before. Like if you have a database with really interesting data for one audience, it might mean something completely different for another audience. It can be different affordance, can have different value, and all from there. And this thing of affordance discovery also allows us to repurpose software for things that originally they were not meant for. For example, a spreadsheet started as an accounting tool, but then people have started using it as project management tools, as like just a documentation tool, as a tool for making calculations, for modeling, for a whole bunch of really, really weird and interesting things that came up. Not because the people that developed the spreadsheets knew that there were going to be people that want to use spreadsheets for modeling. I'm making an example, and I would need to do research to make very sure. But I think you get what I mean, is that this looking for new things that you can do with the tools that you have available is like a natural thing for humans. And the finding of new affordances especially of tools that are that you can bring into different places where they might give you new possibilities, is actually something really, really, really interesting. So what I think is going to happen when we start having this more composable workspaces, where we don't have to keep 20 contexts in our heads and remember, like, okay, yeah, to file a ticket, I need to go to that page, and then I need to tell my colleagues on Slack, and then I need to go there to do that, and then I go there to do that. And this completely schizophrenic state that we currently live in, where we have to keep on switching context to do our job. We can create one context for like the job that we're doing. So that we can say, like, okay, this is the space in which I do this kind of work. This is where I work with my colleagues from work. This is where I come together with my friends to organize our social activities. This is the space for that, where these spaces become more oriented around your personal use and the affordances that you require for that personal use, rather than that you have to like keep switching between the different tools that you're trying to use to do your things. So what I think that will happen is that the features that you have, the capabilities, what you think your tools do, today is very important because that's how you market it and so on. But if we have large language models that can figure out how to bridge between how you think about the world and how certain tools that you're already using think about the world and what they can do, and what affordances other people have discovered that they can do with those tools, then maybe I'm careful not to say AI, because I think that there's a lot of word confusion, and AI is like this giant label that can mean everything and anything for everybody. And because of that, I think I distrust it a bit, because um, it really leads you to like this magical thinking. I prefer thinking about generative AI, like technologies that are using large language models to expand the context in which of a certain message. That's the other blog post that I think that what actually this technology does is that uh, you can now have one word and you can like expand it into more words, or you can contract it into less words, and you can use it to have like two contexts and make a bridge between the two. It's very, very fascinating stuff. But with all of this, I think that affordance discovery and the declaration of affordances becomes a really essential thing that we need to be doing. How you do that, actually also with a developer portal. You do that with a developer portal by also publishing solutions and use cases, and use case documentation in your developer portal, so that you can make the affordances that you have discovered or that your customers have discovered also available through generative AI for automation purposes, for people that are looking for them, for maybe agentic tools that are trying to automate tasks and execute tasks automatically. So the and affordances, I think I wanted to explain it and I wanted to bring it in here, but it's not a good word. It's not a good marketing word, because of this. I think it's a strange loop, because it connects different layers of systems with each other, and because of that, it just you can't. It's hard to catch it in your head. It's like with a lot of things in complexity, that they're like this hyper objects that you look at it and you're like half confused. You get something, but you're not really sure yet, and you look at it from another direction, and you get it a little bit better, but it's still a little bit confusing. So I think it's one of those words. And because of that, it's not a good marketing term. I think probably solution and automation portals might be a better term, and I think that might be the future of developer portals. So, and like what rests me is, I don't know if you know this gentleman. Oh, thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you know Simon? If you know, thumbs up. If you don't know, thumbs down. Okay. Okay. So go check out his work. He's awesome. His work is really, really interesting. He developed this Wardley mapping, which is a strategy tool that helps you to map a value chain against the industrialization of the individual components that you have. So if you have a developer that is the customer for Developer Portal, or in this case, who's using APIs that are managed in API management, and then where it used to be that the compute happened somewhere in the server farm, in the server room, as things evolve, like compute becomes SaaS, API management becomes more like utility, APIs become more like products. These value chains change, and things starts moving. A very, very interesting tool. Sam Worley used the tool to predict SaaS cloud computing. So very, very interesting. Now, the interesting thing with this map is that you can look at like what typically happens with every technology is that you go from initial start, genesis, to custom building, to productizing, to something becoming a utility or a commodity. And then as you move up in the value chain, as you get closer to the customer, you get more differentiation, complexity, and value. And what that means is that you can start looking at where are you with your tool in this map today, and how is it going to evolve because of these new technologies. Like if your tool is now becoming an API only, if it's no longer used as a space, then you're disconnected from your customer, and your customer there's less value because it's less visible in the system. What I think will happen with developer portals is that there's a split coming between customer-facing and employee-facing developers. This has been for a while, but where the customer-facing becomes more of a solution affordance portal, the employee-facing becomes more of an automation portal, where it's no longer the developers that are customers, but it's actually people that are not developers that become the customers for the documentation portals, including API documentation, but also the solutions, the affordances, and so on, that are stored. And SaaS today is somewhere here on the map. It's this is also why it's so successful. It's very, very high, very close to the customer, very visible, but it's also very almost a utility. So there's a lot of scaling effects happening. What happens is that this will shift down, or there's two places that you can go. Either you get closer to the customer and you become more custom, and you become a space that's better adapted to the needs of specific people, or you drift down in the value chain and you become more of an API or backend system. And this has a place, and there's money to be made here, but it's a utility play where it's there's a lot of money here, but it's more standardization. There's very little. It's not differentiated. It's more of an investment game that you're playing here. Like if you have a lot of money, this is an interesting place to be. Like the hyperscalers. This space is the place where, as entrepreneurs, we normally spend most of our time, where we try to be as close to the customer as we can, and hopefully more product-like, but potentially also a little bit of custom build. Because here's where there's more value to be made, because you're having more interaction with the customer. And last, I want to before I go over to the questions, I want to call out Sangeet Paul Chaudhuri's work, who's been writing about sandwich economics, that talks about similar trends where you need to go read the story, but he talks about how you don't want to be sandwiched between a cloud, like the cloud infrastructure, and a user interface that is like an AI user interface, where because if you're sandwiched between these two layers in the value chain, then it's very easy to squeeze you. And I think that so as a SaaS company, what I think you need to do, what's really important is to have APIs to make sure that you control the way that people are getting access to your APIs, so you can learn what are the affordances of your APIs. And you can also start experimenting with automation, with these AI tools, with agentic technologies, so that you own the relationship with the customer, no matter if they're going to be using your tool as a space or as a tool, or well, a tool if they're going to use your software as a space or as a tool. In both cases, you really want to own that experience, because if you lose that experience, if you let somebody like an aggregator come in between you and the customer, then they will do that learning about the affordances. And that will mean that you drift down in the value chain, and then you become easy prey for the large hyperscalers that are looking for ways to take over as much as possible of the systems of records that organizations have. So you need to own your interfaces. And with that, I want to open the floor for questions and feedback. I'm very curious how this all was. This is the first time that I'm talking about this. As you could see, like I didn't have as much sexy slides as I normally try to have. Um, yeah, I'm curious about feedback. Did this make sense? Did you already see this? What do you think? Solly, can you unmute?